everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. I know what you need, some more rock and read. Today we'll read chapter 45 and chapter 46 of Iron Man by the riffmaster from Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi. Now let's check out chapter 45. Ronnie was up for doing something together, but I didn't get in touch with him for a while because we were still in a state of confusion about Ozzy. After he left, I finally said to Bill and Geezer, "Why don't we try Ronnie?" I called him and said, "We're having another type of situation. Would you be interested in having a go?" We invited him over to the house and played him Children of the Sea. Just like that, Ronnie came up with this vocal melody for it. We were really impressed, because within a day, we had gone from nothing happening for ages to being able to come up with a song immediately. We played a bit of Lady Evil, and Ronnie immediately sang to that as well. We thought, bloody hell, we're on to a winner. It gave us a bit of a lift. We were still feeling sad about Ozzy going, but it had run its course. Now we were pleased that we were actually able to do something. Ozzy had left the house by then, but Don Arden was trying desperately to get him back into the band. Don finally had this band that he had always wanted, and we broke up. He couldn't accept that. He had to have the original lineup. So he insisted it's never going to work with Ronnie. I said, but it is working. We've got some good stuff, and we're rolling. And Ozzy is not capable at the moment of doing this. He's not into it at all. He kept going, give him another chance. We had lived all those 10 months at the house, and nothing was happening with Ozzy. So how come it would suddenly be happening in another couple of weeks? We also hadn't forgotten the fact that Ozzy had already left once, before Never Say Die. It cost us a fortune. We weren't creating anymore. Everybody got depressed and pissed off with everything. So we didn't see how we could go on with him anymore. Don still carried on. We've got to get Ozzy back. We've got to get Ozzy back. We said, Don, he's not into it. It's not going to work. And Don, of course, came back with, you can't have a short guy singing for Black Sabbath. As he would, but we had to draw the line. We were to go on with Ronnie. Then Geezer left. He had marital problems, so he had to go home to sort it out and basically leave the band for a while. Ronnie played the bass for a bit, so suddenly we were a three-piece. Bill, Ronnie, and me. We came up with a couple of things, but that's when I flew Jeff Nichols over. I said, we'll just get somebody in temporarily who can help out while we are here. The first song the four of us came up with was Heaven and Hell. I played this riff and Ronnie just sang away to it. It was that instantaneous, and we said to each other, oh man, do we like this. Ronnie always drove up in his Cadillac. He had to raise the seat up. The car was that big. There were a lot of snakes where we lived. We found out that Ronnie was afraid of them. So I got this snake, and I tied a piece of fishing line to its head and fixed it to the handle of the car door. I put the snake on the passenger side and closed the door, so when Ronnie opened the driver's door, he'd pull the snake toward him. It worked. He almost himself. It came back at me because I went to the loo one day in my bedroom and lifted the lid up, and bloody hell, there was a snake there. Myself before I could reach the toilet seat. We played jokes on each other all the time. Joking around like that makes people get along better. It's also a test, I suppose, to see if somebody is going to be able to put up with it. Things were going very well, but we still had Don going, "It's never gonna work. If you don't get Ozzy back, that's it." We were at work at the house, and all of a sudden, some guys turned up to take the furniture away that Sharon had rented for us. Gradually, we were seeing things going missing. We warned each other, "Don't let them in. They'll take the couch." It was absolutely awful, so we decided to sever our relationship with Don completely. He had wanted to manage us for such a long time, and now he had looked after us for only a short while. Sandy Pearlman, an American guy who managed Blue Oyster Cult, then wanted to take us on. We kept that on the back burner, because we went back to doing it ourselves, just like we had done before Don took over. We still had Mark Forrester working for us, who had helped out with the day-to-day stuff since the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath days. He was like an assistant, traveling around with us, organizing the hotels and transportation and whatnot. Mark had some physical problems, an elephantiasis type of thing in his groin. The silly thing was, he'd be standing there and he'd have this big bulge, and instead of trying to hide it, he'd put a stage pass on it, so the first place you'd look was down there. I got a call one day after the Ronnie lineup had broken up to be told that Mark was gone. They couldn't find any family, so they asked, "Do you want his belongings?" I said, "No, I don't want anything." I felt really bad. Mark was English, but he must have married an American, because I think he had a son somewhere. I told them this, but I didn't know where he was. Anyway, with Mark still being very much there and assisting us at the time, we decided we had no option but to move out of the house. The Ardens had virtually emptied the place, and the lease was up. We thought, let's move away from LA altogether. It was the wrong place for us then, so we shipped out to Miami. Well, that concludes chapter 45, so why don't we dive right in to chapter 46. We looked around the plane flying to Miami and said, "Why is there nobody on this flight?" It turned out we were flying into a hurricane, and everybody was leaving the place. We thought, everybody's going out, and we are coming in. We got there, and everything was boarded up. We had rented Barry Gibbs' house, but we stayed at a hotel first for 3 days because it was dangerous everywhere else. They boarded the building up completely. Getting ready for this storm, you had to fill your bathtub, and you couldn't leave the hotel. They had sandwiches there, but of course, they ran out of food in the end. One day, me and Jeff stood on my balcony like two idiots, and we saw all the trees swaying. Then we heard, "You! Hey you! Get back in the room! Get off that balcony!" It was this policeman. "You idiots! Get in the room!" It was frightening. It got to a point where they said, "Now it's too late to leave, so you gotta stay. Get to shelters." We went, "Oh, here it comes." We only caught the edge of the storm. There were lampposts blowing over, traffic lights flying around, and trees being uprooted, but it didn't hit with the full force. Still, it was bad enough to frighten the out of us. We stayed at Barry Gibbs' house for months. He had moved into another place. We did the same as we did in LA. We created a rehearsal studio where we set all the gear up. We had Craig Gruber come in, a bass player who used to be with Rainbow, just like Ronnie. We kept Jeff because we got on so well with him that we tried him on the keyboards. He was fairly new to it, but he was good enough for what we wanted. Play the chords and come up with some ideas as far as what to play behind the chords. We wrote more stuff, without Geezer this time. It was awkward for me and Bill, because we were so used to working with him. Everything felt like it was on a temporary basis, because we were still hoping that Geezer would come back. It was hard, but we carried on. Writing actually went really smoothly, and we soon finished an album's worth of songs. Bill was really boozing a lot. He had his wife with him there, and she was drinking heavily as well. Bill would wake up in the morning, all bright, and he'd have a beer from the fridge, and another beer, and another beer. I'd go, "Bill, how many beers have you had now?" "Oh, I've only had 2. But it would be about 10 by then. It became known as, "He's only had 2. Throughout the day, he'd go from this pleasant phase to being really dismal, changing as he was drinking more. We'd avoid him by 9 or 10 o'clock at night because he would get into a real down state of mind and become aggressive. Meanwhile, his playing was fine. He'd drink in the mornings, but he was playing all right if he'd only had a few. It was afterwards at night that he'd slip into the next stage. And if we decided to have a day off, bloody hell, he'd go for it all the way. As ever, Bill was the one we played jokes on. On one occasion, I got this number of Alcoholics Anonymous and the name of the guy in charge. I said to Bill, "Some blokes called up. You've got an interview." "Huh?" "You've got an interview. Phone him up and ask for this guy's name, and just say, 'Can you help me? It's Bill Ward.'" And he did. Bill went, "Hello, I'm Bill Ward. Can you help me? I've been told to call you." They started going on about the problems of alcohol. We were in the back listening in, and he freaked out completely. I had never seen him like that. The phone went up in the air and crashed to the floor. We all off as fast as we could. He didn't take it as a joke at all, and was in a terrible mood for ages. We just kept out of the way for a good day. Still, in spite of his boozing, we gave him the job of going down to the bank to collect the money for the wages for everybody. We wanted to give him a purpose. "Don't get pissed in the morning, Bill. You've got to go to the bank." "Oh, all right. Yeah, okay." He really took it seriously. He'd be up in the morning and shave and dress up. He bought himself a briefcase, and suddenly he became this business guy, going down to the bank and becoming all responsible. It was funny the way you saw the change in him every Friday when he had to go to collect the money. Ronnie really liked Bill. However, having Ronnie join changed the dynamics of the band, and that affected Bill. He wasn't 100% happy with the situation. He was accustomed to having Ozzy around, as we all were. But Bill just couldn't get used to him not being there anymore. Also, I think the drinking didn't help. As a matter of fact, things got so bad that he wouldn't stay for very much longer. Bill might have missed Ozzy, but this certainly didn't mean we could have gone for somebody that sounded like him. Then, there would have been criticism all over the place. And besides, there's only one Ozzy. We went with Ronnie because we liked the way he worked, and we liked his voice. The music took a different turn after he joined us. For Heaven and Hell, we were writing for a singer who was so different that it opened more doors. When you work with Ozzy for 10 years, you know roughly what he's going to sing and how he's going to do that. You're familiar with his capabilities. We didn't know what Ronnie's capabilities were, and it was a matter of pushing all the time to see what he could do. It was new blood in the band. I could play different chords. It gave me other places to go music-wise. And Ronnie really encouraged me to play solos, to break out a bit more. It wasn't like I had a lack of solos in the old days, but Ozzy would never say, "Why don't you put a solo there?" He wasn't that involved in it. Or maybe he was for a bit, and then his attention span would go, and he'd be off. He didn't put much in the pot. That wasn't his fault. He just wasn't that musical. He couldn't play an instrument, so he wouldn't know what chords to go to, whereas with Ronnie, we were working more like a band, because if you sat down with him, he'd have a guitar as well, or a bass, and he'd go, "What about this chord?" "Oh yeah," Yeah. And then we'd improve on that. Ronnie had this huge involvement, which was great. Ozzy would sing with the riff. Just listen to Iron Man, and you'll catch my drift. His vocal melody line copies the melody of the music. There was nothing wrong with that. But Ronnie liked singing across the riff instead of with it, come up with a melody that was different from that of the music, which musically opens a lot more doors. I don't want to sound like I'm knocking Ozzy, but Ronnie's approach opened up a new way for me to think, oh yeah, I can go here from that. Ronnie brought quite a lot as far as the sound of his voice goes as well. He knew what he wanted, and he could tell us in music terms, why don't we try an A there? Ozzy couldn't. He wouldn't know what an A or a D was. At best, he might go, we'll need something else there. Any ideas? Not really. What about, We also became more professional. Ronnie always wanted to make everything better. He always pushed, both on stage as well as off. It was good for us because it pushed all of us. Over the years, we probably got a little bit lazy and relied too much on the things we knew, but Ronnie challenged us. That way, we became more of a band again. We got tighter, trying to protect the band, protect what we had, and we believed in what we had. Well, that's the end of chapter 46. Let me know what you thought of both chapters in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.